telling you why Santa Claus is coming to town.
Good morning, boys and girls. I'm Eleanor Hawkins, and welcome to Telestory Time. Yes, Christmas is almost here, and today is our Christmas show. Our very first story this morning is A Christmas Carol. Ebenezer Scrooge was an old miser. He would not spend a penny on heating his office. He made his assistant, Bob Cratchit, work in the freezing cold. Bob would have loved to leave his job, but he needed the money that Scrooge paid him to support his wife and children. Old Christmas was coming, and Bob thought of his youngest child, Tiny Tim, who was lame and walked with a crutch. He knew that he could not afford to buy his poor son even the smallest present. When Bob brought up the subject of Christmas, all Scrooge would say was, "Christmas, bah humbug." That evening, as Ebenezer Scrooge sat by his flickering fire, the ghost of his dead business partner, Jacob Marley, appeared. Marley was found bound in chains which rattled as he walked. Scrooge was terribly afraid. "Change your ways," said the ghost, "or you will end up like me. Tonight you will be visited by 3 spirits. Heed them well." Marley's ghost had spoken the truth. Later that night, as the clock struck midnight, the first of the 3 spirits appeared. "I am the spirit of Christmas past," she said. "I will show you all that has been." The spirit took the trembling Scrooge from his bed and flew with him into his past life. She showed him all the terrible things he had done because of his greed and love of money. The second spirit was a jolly round gentleman who carried a glowing torch. "I am the spirit of Christmas present," he said. "Hold on to my robe." Scrooge held on to the spirit's robe and was carried away through the night to the house of Bob Cratchit. Bob sat at his table with his wife, Tiny Tim, and his other children. Scrooge paid his assistant so little that it was a very poor meal. Yet Bob held up his glass and said, "Here's to Mr. Scrooge. May he have a Merry Christmas." The old miser bowed his head in shame. "Oh, take me away from here, spirit," he said. Now the third spirit was a terrible hooded spirit. "I am the spirit of Christmas future," he said. "I will show you things that have yet to be." Then the spirit took Scrooge to a churchyard and pointed to a neglected grave on which was carved the name Ebenezer Scrooge. "No, no, spirit, no," cried Scrooge. "Take me back to my bed. I will change my ways." The spirit did as he was asked, and when Scrooge awoke the next morning, he remembered all that he had learned from the 3 spirits. Oh, it was Christmas morning, and Scrooge jumped out of bed with a big smile. He dressed hurriedly and rushed out into the street, wishing everyone he passed a Merry Christmas. Scrooge went into the shops and bought much food and as many presents as he could carry, and took it all to Bob Cratchit's house. He gave Bob a large pay raise and declared that he now knew the true meaning of Christmas. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us everyone. And that is the story of A Christmas Carol. And now, boys and girls, stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment. And now, boys and girls, I'm going to read you about the day that Clement Clark Moore wrote the beautiful poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas. A long, long time ago, in the 1882, 195 years ago, it was the day that Clement Clark Moore wrote The Night Before Christmas. It was the day before Christmas, and Professor Moore, who taught Greek and Latin at Columbia College in New York City, was so excited he was going to buy the Christmas turkey for the family dinner that night. He and his servant got into the big sleigh, and away they went, with the snowflakes falling and the sleigh bells ringing. They were going to the city to buy the Christmas turkey. Clement Clark Moore was trying to think of something special to give his 3 children for Christmas. On the way home, he decided to write a poem. And when he arrived home, he went straight to his library and wrote what we now know is The Night Before Christmas, but he called it A Visit from St. Nicholas. After dinner that Christmas Eve, all the family gathered in front of the fireplace, and Dr. Moore read the beautiful poem, his Christmas gift to his children, on that Christmas Eve in 1822. The poem has been published in many languages, in Braille and sign language. I have been collecting The Night Before Christmas since 1949, and I have 60, that was 64 years ago. And now I have hundreds of the collection of the book in different illustrations, and I'm going to share some of them with you right now. The very first one I want to show you is this very, very little one. It's as big as my thumbnail, but it has every word of The Night Before Christmas. And if you think you can't read it, we have a little magnifying glass that's included in this ornament. Another very important one is this ornament that we flick the pages and the whole poem is in this ornament, The Night Before Christmas. And then a very important thing happened, and this is a postage stamp, The Night Before Christmas postage stamp, and it was an 8-cent one. And I believe it tells me on the back that this was actually issued in 1972. A beautiful picture of Santa with "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And then I want to show you this ornament very quickly. A beautiful book ornament with "The Night Before Christmas" and Santa's sleigh. Those are my ornaments that have "The Night Before Christmas." And now, when Clement Clark Moore wrote the poem that Christmas Eve, I have a reproduction of his writing. And this is A Visit from St. Nicholas, and it's in his writing, and a beautiful reproduction, and I prize this very much, in a leather binding, A Visit from St. Nicholas. And now, boys and girls, I have some very old editions I want to show you. The Night Before Christmas, and this is published in the late 1800s. And you see Santa Claus has just come down the chimney. And this is back in the 1880s. I have several very, very old ones here. And you see Santa Claus is getting the list from his little girl of what she wants for Christmas. You can tell it's very old. And then this one looks like it's very old, but it's in very good condition. And I have it in plastic because it is really a prize. This was written in 1850, and it is A Visit from St. Nicholas, and it's the first time that a publisher published, instead of Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas. Now, boys and girls, these are editions that are in cloth. Our children's books back in the 18 and early 1900s were all in cloth, and this is muslin, but beautiful illustrations. You see, this was very durable. And now this one is one of my oldest cloth ones, and you see It's been read many, many times. And this is my favorite old one that I have to handle very carefully. This is one of my very oldest ones, and there it is, called The Night Before Christmas, or A Visit from St. Nicholas. And boys and girls, we can hardly turn the pages of this book because it has binding on, it has 3 pages for one. But there it is, when what to my wondering eyes should appear. And here are the children nestled snug in their bed. Boys and girls, this has been a great treat for me to collect The Night Before Christmas, because my mother read it to us every Christmas Eve when we were very little, my sister and me, until we grew up and had boyfriends and were married. Every Christmas Eve she read us The Night Before Christmas, just before bedtime. And I have continued having that tradition in our family. And all through the years, honoring my mother's tradition, I read The Night Before Christmas to our family on Christmas Eve. Boys and girls, that might be something that many of you would like to start. And now I'm going to put my books back in my box, if I can, and I'm going to read you that beautiful poem. I have to handle them very gently, and I keep them in plastic. And if I were being a very good person, I would use gloves. And now here we go with my reading my very favorite book of all, The Night Before Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, oh, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes how they twinkled, oh, his dimples how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. A stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. Oh, he had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. Oh, he was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." And now, boys and girls, stay tuned. We'll be back with another story in just a moment. And now, boys and girls, I'm going to read you The Naughty Little Reindeer. 8 little reindeer stood side by side in their cozy barn eating their supper. "Oh, I've got to eat lots," said Dasher and Dancer. "So we can go fast," agreed Vixen. "All around the world we'll go," grinned Comet and Cupid. But Prancer shook his head in the naughtiest way. "Not me. I'm not going this year." The other reindeer stopped eating. "Not going?" they cried. "No," said Prancer. "Tired of going. This year I'm staying right here and wait for Santa Claus to come to me." And then he hopped into his bed, pulled the quilt over his head. And just as he did, Santa Claus came into the barn. He whistled merrily to himself as he piled his sleigh full of wonderful toys. But when he saw only 7 reindeer ready to go, his face fell. Well, where's Prancer?" he asked. 7 little reindeer pointed to Prancer's bed. The quilt moved uneasily, and Prancer peeped out. "Not going," he said. "Going to stay right in bed." The other reindeer held their breath. They thought Santa Claus might be cross. Now, perhaps Prancer did too. Well, I'm getting a cold," said the naughty little reindeer, "or maybe measles, or maybe both together." Oh, that was a whopper. But Santa was never cross. He never had been cross, and he wasn't cross then. He just winked at his other reindeer and harnessed them to his sleigh. Out of the barn they dashed into the snowy night. Prancer listened to the sleigh bells. They sounded rather slow and not nearly so merry as on other Christmas Eves when he had gone too. And Santa's voice blew back with the wind. "Now, Dasher, now, Dancer," he called. "On Vixen and Cupid, on Comet, on Donder and Blitzen." For a moment Prancer felt quite lonesome. He missed having his name called. "I don't care," he told himself. "I'm tired, and it's cold outside. Anyway, I've carried enough toys. It's time for me to have some presents, and they be brought to me." And with that, he curled up, wondering what Santa Claus would bring to him. Oh, how Prancer hoped Santa Claus would hurry up and come back very soon. "But he can't hurry with only 7 reindeer instead of 8, thought the little reindeer. "Maybe he won't get all around the world without me to help," he said. "And maybe he won't get to all the good children's houses." But when Prancer said good, he remembered that Santa Claus never, never, never comes to anyone who is naughty. "Oh me," he cried, "I've spoiled everything. I was good all year, and now I've spoiled everything on Christmas Eve." Out of the bed he jumped, kicking his quilt up into the air. Maybe I can still catch up," he cried. Out of the barn he streaked, and across the crisp white snow. He skimmed over the housetops faster and faster. Faster, he told himself, faster. And at last, quite out of breath, the little reindeer caught up with Santa's sleigh. It was on a housetop, and Santa himself was disappearing down the chimney. "Oh, I thought I'd never catch up," panted Prancer, trotting toward his friends. "Shucks," said Comet, "we couldn't go very fast without aid." "And my harness kept twisting because you were missing," Vixen said. "Well, I'm not missing now," said Prancer, and he slipped into his place. And when Santa Claus came back, away went that sleigh, faster than ever before. All around the world it went, with the sleigh bells jingling wildly and gaily. Before long, the last stocking was filled, and the last toy was placed under the last shining tree. Then 8 tiny little reindeer hurried home. They pawed the snow impatiently. While Santa Claus opened the barn doors, they yawned and they blinked in the sleepiest kind of way. But once the doors were flung open, they weren't one bit sleepy anymore, because right in the middle of the barn stood a fat Christmas tree, all trimmed and lighted. And under it were red blankets and new green feed bags and bouquets and new green feed bags and bouquets of crisp carrots and baskets of red apples and little boxes of sparkling sugar cubes. 7 little reindeer pranced into the barn with shining eyes. But Prancer stood outside, hanging his head. "I expect there's only 7 of everything, sir," he whispered to Santa Claus. "I was pretty bad, and I wasn't getting a cold at all." Santa Claus just chuckled and patted the little reindeer's head. "I know," he said, "and I knew you'd change your mind about not going. That's why I told Mrs. Santa Claus to fix 8 of everything for my 8 good little reindeer." That there was never a happier reindeer than that little Prancer. And you know what made him happiest of all was being sure that Santa Claus understands about everything, just as people have always said he did. And that, boys and girls, is the story of the naughty little reindeer. And now stay tuned, and we'll be back with more stories in just a moment. And now, boys and girls, I'm going to read the real Christmas story. And it came to pass in those days, there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same countries shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly hosts, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. And now, boys and girls, I'm going to read you O Little Town of Bethlehem. O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie. Above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by. Yet in thy dark streets shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. And so now, Telestory Time wants to wish you a very happy Christmas to all of you.
You better not shout, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. I'm making a list, I'm checking it twice, I'm gonna find out who's naughty or nice. Santa Claus is coming to town. I know when you've been sleeping, and I know when you're awake. I know if you've been bad or good, so you better be good for goodness sake. You better not shout, better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why.